The condition of the Emperor of Mankind is often spoken about in simple, almost comforting terms. He fought Horus, he was mortally wounded, he was placed on the Golden Throne, and he has been slowly dying ever since. That version fits neatly into the mythology of the Imperium. It has the clean shape of a legend. But when you actually stop and examine what the lore describes, the situation becomes far stranger and far more disturbing. What is wrong with the Emperor is not simply an injury. It is not even a collection of injuries. It is a state of being that no longer fits any normal definition of life, death, or recovery. The Emperor was never an ordinary organism. Long before the heresy, he survived wounds that would have annihilated any other being. He was a perpetual, a psychic construct of unimaginable complexity, a mind and soul so vast that his physical body was little more than a projection of his will. Throughout the Great Crusade, he endured trauma and regenerated from it because his essence remained fundamentally intact. Damage to the flesh was, for him, a secondary concern. But the confrontation with Horus was not that kind of conflict. It was not two warriors exchanging blows. It was a metaphysical catastrophe. When Horus struck the Emperor aboard the Vengeful Spirit, he did so as the living embodiment of the Chaos Gods. The weapons he used were not merely claws, blades, and brute strength. They were distilled malice from the warp itself. The wounds inflicted in that battle were not surgical, they were existential. Horus attacked the Emperor on every level at once, physically, psychically, and spiritually. And that is the first key point to understand. The Emperor is not failing to heal from a set of conventional injuries. He is suffering from damage that exists outside the rules of biology. I sometimes think people underestimate how strange that this duel actually was. We imagine it like a Titanic version of a Primarch brawl, but it wasn't. It was closer to two gods tearing at the fabric of each other's being, at reality itself. When the Emperor was cut, it was not just his body that bled. Parts of his mind, his identity, his very connection to reality were ripped apart. No apothecary, no technology, no amount of time can fix that kind of harm. And this is why the Golden Throne does not heal him. The throne was never meant to be a medical device. It was designed as a psychic interface, a regulator for the Webway project, and machine to amplify and control power on an unimaginable scale. After the heresy, it was repurposed as life support, a desperate measure to keep what remained of the Emperor anchored to the material universe. It preserves him and it stabilizes him, but it doesn't restore him, because restoration would require rebuilding something that no longer exists in a coherent form. At a fundamental level, what is wrong with the Emperor is fragmentation. The battle with Horus shattered the unity of his being. The Emperor who strode across the galaxy during the Great Crusade was a singular focused intelligence. The Emperor on the throne is something else, a fractured consciousness, held together by arcane machinery and sheer willpower. You cannot regenerate properly if there is no longer a stable template to regenerate from. And this is where things become even more uncomfortable. Even if the Emperor theoretically possessed the ability to heal, he has no opportunity to do so. His current existence allows for no rest, no withdrawal, no recovery. He must constantly maintain the Astronomicon to guide Imperial ships. He must constantly hold shut the ruptured Webway gate beneath the Imperial Palace. He must constantly resist the attentions of the Chaos Gods. Every second of every day, he is performing psychic labor on a scale no other being could endure. Healing requires stillness, and the Emperor is never still. And I'll be honest, when you step back and think about that, it becomes almost unbearable to imagine. 10,000 years of unending effort with no pause, no sleep, no relief. Even a god would break under that weight. And in many ways, he already has. There is also the nature of the wounds themselves. Horus did not merely harm the Emperor, he scarred him with the raw touch of chaos. In Warhammer 40,000's wounds inflicted by the warp do not behave like ordinary injuries. They linger, they twist, and they become part of the victim. The Emperor was struck by the full concentrated will of the Dark Gods acting in unison. Those marks are something that time can't simply smooth away. They are woven into his essence. Another layer is that the Emperor's earlier ability to regenerate may have depended on qualities that he no longer possesses. Before the heresy, he was in a sense whole, a perpetual, a master of biomancy, a uniquely balanced psychic entity. After the duel with Horus, that balance was destroyed. What sits upon the Golden Throne may no longer be capable of the same kind of self-repair, because the mechanisms that enabled it were among the things that were broken. I often find myself thinking about the Emperor less as a patient and more as a ruin, a magnificent still functioning ruin, propped up by scaffolding and constant maintenance. The Golden Throne is not a hospital bed. It is an ancient failing machine, desperately preventing a collapse that already happened 10 millennia ago. There is also the grim possibility that some of the Emperor's damage was self-inflicted, at least in a certain sense. During the final moments of the duel, he chose restraint. He refused to annihilate Horus utterly until the last possible instant, fearing what such an act might turn him into. He cast off aspects of himself, suppressed parts of his nature, and in doing so, may have sacrificed elements that he could never reclaim. If pieces of the Emperor were deliberately discarded in order to win, then those pieces cannot simply grow back. On top of all of this sits the crushing irony of the Imperium itself. Every day the Emperor is sustained by the sacrifice of thousands of psykers. Every day quadrillions of humans pour faith and devotion towards him. These forces do not merely keep him alive, they are actively reshaping him. The Emperor is not only wounded, he's being transformed. The being on the throne in the 41st millennium is not the same entity that fought Horus in the 31st. Even if the original injuries could somehow be healed, what would he exactly heal into? I sometimes wonder whether the Imperium even understands what it is asking for when it prays for the Emperor's recovery. Recovery to what? And to whom? The man who once walked among humanity may no longer exist in any meaningful sense. And there is also the unavoidable problem of the throne itself. It is the ancient, irreplaceable, and failing mechanism of the Imperium. The machine that keeps the Emperor alive is slowly killing him in its own way, feeding upon his essence to maintain functions it was never meant to perform for so long. Just remember what happened to Malkador, one of the most powerful psykers ever to live. The Mechanicus does not truly know how it works. They maintain it through ritual and guesswork. The Emperor is effectively being preserved by a device that is decaying alongside him. Even if his own nature allowed for regeneration, the environment in which he exists actively prevents it. And then there is the paradox at the heart of everything. The Emperor cannot heal because the Imperium requires him to remain as he is. If he were to withdraw inward, to focus on repairing himself perhaps, the Astronomicon would fail, the webway breach would tear open, and Terra would be consumed. His suffering is not incidental to the Imperium's survival, it is the mechanism by which that survival is achieved. That realization always leaves me with a slightly hollow feeling. The Emperor is truly trapped by the very empire he created, forced to endure an eternal half-life because the alternative is extinction. Another unsettling angle is that the Emperor may, in strange sense, always be regenerating, just not in the way the Imperium would recognize. His body decays, but his psychic presence grows ever more vast. Miracles occur in his name, saints manifest, demons recoil from his light. From the perspective of the warp, he may be evolving into something new, something less human and more divine. Physical healing may no longer simply be relevant to what he is becoming. But that transformation only underlines the tragedy. The Emperor cannot return to what he was, because 10,000 years of agony, worship and psychic warfare have carried him too far from that point. Even if every wound inflicted by Horus was somehow erased, the context in which those wounds occurred is gone forever. So what is actually wrong with the Emperor? Everything in a sense. His body is mortally ruined, his soul is scarred by chaos, his mind is fragmented into warring aspects, His life support system is failing, his responsibilities are impossible, and the passage of millennia has reshaped him into something that may no longer be capable of true recovery. I find it strangely poignant that the Imperium still speaks of his eventual healing as if it were just a matter of time. As if he was a wounded king waiting patiently to rise again. The reality presented by the law is far darker. The Emperor does not fail to regenerate because he lacks power. He fails to regenerate because the very concept of regeneration may no longer apply to him. In many ways, he is less a patient on the verge of recovery and more a cosmic wound that has never been allowed to close, held open by duty, by faith, and by the desperate need of a species that cannot survive without his endless torment. And the more closely you examine that, the more it becomes clear that the Emperor's condition is not a temporary state after all, but the final shape of his existence, stretching onward, unchanged and unhealed, into an indefinite future that offers no real possibility of release. If you'd like to support the channel, please like and hype the video in the comment section below, subscribe and check back for daily videos. This archive has now been fully decoded. Continue your journey with the video displayed on screen. The vast wealth of the archives continues to reveal new knowledge of the dark history of the 40k verse. In the grim dark of the far future, there is only war.